This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting for March 26, 2018 at 6:35. I'd like to just start by thanking the board for accommodating the change in schedule again due to the weather. It was important that we have this meeting tonight. We have two members who could not make it tonight just based on work commitments. So the first item on our agenda is an action item, and that's our consent agenda, which is the meeting minutes for February 8th, 2018, allowing a leave for Christine Blanchett, our social worker at Green Acres, and allowing a leave for Brittany Lewandowski, a math coach of Clintonville. The two of them are expecting children, a baby, so they've asked for leave. And then the fourth on the consent agenda is a resignation of Mark Russo, our sixth grade math teacher and blue team leader, who had received a job offer from an alternate school as a administrator. So may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Are there any open items on the meeting minutes in February? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? Okay, motion passes. Unfortunately, our student reps were not aware of the change in date for the Board of Ed, so I apologize for that. I was looking to see if Charlotte was here yet, but I don't see her.
She's here.
Charlotte, oh good, I'm going to utilize you. Charlotte Ciccarelli is a senior at North Haven High School, so maybe you could just kind of update us, including with the sad news I just heard about this week.
Okay, so on March 14th, we held a walkout to honor the victims from the Parkland High School shooting. Students gathered outside for 17 minutes and listened to speeches, songs, and poetry, and then we all proceeded back to class in silence. It was very emotional and meaningful, and it was organized by various student volunteers from the Student Council, class officers, National Honor Society, diversity team, and more. Also on March 14th, students from the Mu Alpha Theta Math Honor Society hosted Pi Day with various activities such as pie baking contests and pie memorization contests. This past Friday was the basketball game between the high school and middle school teachers, with the high school teachers taking home the trophy by 1 point. Also this past weekend, North Haven hosted the annual FPS State Conference with a very good result. 4 teams placed, 3 individuals placed, and many others also placed for scenario writing, graphic arts, and scenario performance. Some of these individuals and teams will also be representing North Haven at the International Conference in June at Wisconsin. Next week, students will be departing for Virginia Beach on the music trip and will be there from Thursday to Sunday. And in sad news, Mr. North Haven, which was originally scheduled for this Thursday, has been postponed, hopefully for May 31st, because of a lot of trouble with the high school theater sound system. It completely broke on us at the rehearsal last Thursday, and they're not sure what's wrong with it, so that's hopefully going to be postponed. Thank you.
You know how many times you're going to have to remind me about that judging now? Because it is in May. Thank you, Charlotte. We appreciate you doing it pretty quickly for us. Ness, as the chairperson's part, I just would like to say a couple of things since the play, since our last meeting. When was Les Mis?
First weekend of March.
Yeah, say that I had the opportunity to see Les Mis, and it was phenomenal play. I recommend everyone to go to the middle school. They're doing Little Mermaid this weekend coming up, next weekend coming up.
Yeah.
And I also want to say how proud I am of our students who honored the victims of the Florida shooting. Our students did a phenomenal job with respect, dignity, and just did a wonderful job. So I want to acknowledge them for that. So thank you. Next we go to unfinished business, which is our discussions regarding the use of turf fields by groups outside the Board of Education. So I just saw something that just came to me. I just want to pull out most of the board, and I think I had asked for it to be put on our website to give ideas for what other schools are charging and what they're doing for synthetic fields. The issue with our fields is we understand that they're in about 10 to 12 years that they're going to have to be maintained. We may need new fields at that time based on what we've learned from the Spindrift and the others who put them in. So there's been a lot of controversy. How do we raise that money? So today, in addition to the charges that we have here, and this is a board discussion, and there will be public comment later, but you're going to hear the board talking, and I just ask you to respect each and every person's, those that are in the audience right now, to listen to them and respect what the board is saying, but there will be an opportunity for public comment after our discussion. But in addition to the fields and the charges, today, I sent to the board late this afternoon, and I hope you all had an opportunity to get it. Did you get it, Goldie, my proposals?
Yeah, I'm checking up my email.
Okay, I put together a list of discussion purposes for our meeting tonight, and basically it was on what a couple of people from the town had reached out to me within the last 2 to 3 months regarding jamborees, key card access as an alternative to charging the North Haven Youth Organization. So my proposal right now, and again, it's up for all kinds of discussion, is for this year, we do not charge North Haven youth sports for this year. What we will do is review other district procedures and have our continued discussion with the town on the replacement of the fields. What we will charge for is in-town and out-of-town youth camps and clinics. Organizers will be charged for the use of the fields. What we also will charge for this year, and at any time, anyone interrupt me.
Can I ask, are you talking this year, school year or calendar year?
I'm looking from this year through November of
Okay.
next year, putting something into place, say, from now to fall.
Okay.
Spring through fall next year, and we take the summer and a good time to look at what we're doing.
So fall this year or fall next year?
Fall 2018.
Okay, fall this year. Okay.
Okay, I'll go back. So we charge in-town and out-of-town youth organizations for camps and clinics. We will charge for all youth and adult jamborees. The youth organizations have offered to help us with marketing and bringing in jamborees to our facilities. All adult leagues, regardless of where they come from, whether they're in town or out of town, will be charged to use our fields as well as any custodial fees. All youth league scheduling, and again, keep asking me, because I'm just going down the list that I put down for topics to talk about. All youth scheduling must follow the current scheduling protocol. The middle school, high school practices and games have priority over all the field. And this may mean a youth team has to relocate or change their practice if a middle school or high school practice or game has been rescheduled due to weather or cancellation or something, and then they now need to use the field. One of the issues we have with the fields is the cost of the maintenance of, not the maintenance in 10 years from now and redoing, the everyday maintenance of this field after a practice, after a game, after a jamboree. Originally, we had talked about having a custodian having to go to each and every one of those. I think we did some sort of costing at one time, and it was pretty high, a mental noting on that. And in talking to other schools, some of them do it, some of them do not. But a parent did suggest to me that except for jamborees, this is me saying except for jamborees, we can admit having a custodian at each practice and game by installing a key card access to the field. So basically what they're saying is a key card would be given to the head coach of whatever game. So if it's a youth lacrosse, that coach for the 8 to 9 would have that key card, and each key card is for individual persons. And that coach is responsible for ensuring the field stays clean, there's no litter, gates are locked, and because we have access as who entered and who left, and the timing, if we see any damage, or if there's litter, or if the fields are damaged, or we know who to go to and who's held for accountability on that. And so, that's something to do, and if we can, if that's something that the board decides that they'd like to do, I don't have a cost of what a key card access would be, but it was something it's not in our budget this year. It was something that I would probably reach out to the organizations who are gonna use our fields to think about giving as a gift to the Board of Ed. Just have to throw that in there if we do that. The other thing that I need to make clear is that we must have an insurance certificate on file for all organizations that use our fields. If an insurance certificate is not on file, the organization will not be able to use our field. That's the law, we have no choice on that. I just want to publicly be able to say that if you're using our field as of April 3rd, and Mr. Blumenthal doesn't have a copy of your insurance certificate, we don't have a file for it up in our finance office, you will not be able to use the fields until that's there. I know most organizations have that insurance certificate readily available, but we need to have that, and I believe we're starting with practices next week. Is that correct?
Well, you haven't told me a date, so I don't know
Okay.
how to respond to that. So.
Okay, so those were a couple of thoughts that I put together outside of all of these, and I'd like to hear some of your ideas.
I have some questions, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
So, have we done a dispensation like this previously for organizations looking to utilize Board of Ed facilities?
You mean, have we gone to other people looking?
No, have we provided a dispensation, meaning have we allowed them to utilize facilities without paying previously?
So we're talking outside of North Haven or within North Haven?
No, within North Haven. So I think we're talking about providing a special dispensation for the youth leagues, the in-town North Haven youth leagues,
Mhm.
from now until November.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious to see if this is something that had been done previously, or if this is new now, and if it's new now.
We,
kind of-
outside of basketball at Montouise, we've never charged any organization for the schools, any, I'll say, sports organizations. The reason we charged at Montouise was because we were paying overtime for a custodian to be there on Sundays or Saturdays. And that was the reason why we charged. And we just charged for whatever the custodial fees would be.
Because we do charge for theater and auditorium use.
I was
currently,
talking about
correct?
sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we charge for theater and auditorium use, do we black box that money for replacement of theater equipment and sound equipment?
I don't know.
No.
No, okay, I'm just curious.
Mhm.
And do we know how many jamborees we have lined up?
We don't have any at this
We don't have
moment. At this moment.
And-
And I'm sure when we get public comment, and the person who proposed this to me is going to be speaking, I think. Is he here tonight? I can't tell. Perhaps will give a idea to me and tell me what the thought is. But when we first started talking about doing the fields and having the pavement there, the thought was, because we have such good fields now that cover soccer, lacrosse, that we can put in jamborees, because they're always looking for places. And if I remember correctly, and I'd have to go back in our notes and look, I think people said that there's a lot, each team gets charged like $1,000 to $1,500 to participate in that jamboree. Now, not all that money would come to us, but if you have 10 teams and we got $400 from each team, and we have 4 jamborees a year, that would cover our savings for putting putting money aside for the long term for replacements.
So $4,000, give or take. I mean, this is back of the envelope math. I'm not.
Yeah,
asking
I don't
for
know. I'm
you.
doing give or
This
take
is
too.
Thumb in the wind kind of stuff. But I'm just trying to get my head around like what the anticipated, because when we've been talking about these fields for a while now, we've been told a number of times that they could potentially be a profit center
Mhm.
for the town of North Haven, which is a good thing, right?
Mhm.
Especially in challenging budget times. So I just want to kind of get a feel for what the potential profit could be if we're not planning on if we're planning on providing a dispensation for youth leagues. Do we have a CBA from anybody, a cost benefit analysis?
Yeah, I don't think we have a cost benefit analysis from anyone yet. Again, this was all for discussion and questions to be asked
Yep,
for.
that's fine.
And when we go to, again, for public comment, I believe that there's a couple of people here who have run jamborees or have participated and would be able to help us to talk about how much money we could make, because that is the idea, to make it a money, if we can do that.
Right, especially when we're facing a very challenging budget year. If we can make some lemonade, that would be great, but obviously we want to balance that with supporting our youth leagues as much as possible. So when we talk about the head coach having a key card to lock and unlock the fields, would that coach be personally liable for damages?
He wouldn't personally be liable, but the organization would be liable.
The organization would be liable, and that's the certificate of insurance ensures that.
Sure.
Okay.
I know that for the town, for instance, and I don't have daughters, so if anybody has, for girls softball, the town doesn't send someone over there to turn the lights on and off. They give that access to the coach at the softball field, is that right?
Yep.
To one of the coaches at the softball field to be responsible for those fields, turning lights on, turning them off, and I believe whatever else needs to be done in there. That's something I learned recently.
Are we confident that we can attract these jamborees? Are we still waiting on bleachers for these fields?
I don't understand the bleachers, two things with bleachers. There were some bleachers that were just transferred, I just learned this today, transferred from another, one of our parks or fields to our synthetic fields. And I do understand that right now, and if anyone from the building committee could probably answer this to me, the bleachers are on the alternate list of what things that they want.
So the bleachers came from another BOE field?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know which one?
And I can ask Steve, do you know which ones they came from?
I believe they came from the all-purpose field. They came from Bailey Road. I would add that for what we have, they're not sufficient. We definitely need, what we had planned for. So hopefully that will be coming soon. I don't know what soon means, but they're not sufficient for the kinds of events that we want to host.
Okay.
I believe there was another set moved, I talked to Phil Diana about it, from the JV softball field, because there was a set of bleachers there, but where they were placed was not in a spot that would allow for the visiting team to practice pitching, and it was not in a space safe for visitors to actually sit. So we thought instead of them just sitting there and being wasted, it might be a good idea to move them. So that could be another set that would move.
Anita, I just have a question about the proposal and specifically about process, because I think if we don't figure that out, we're going to be talking in a lot of different directions at once. So my question is, are you suggesting with this proposal that we first decide which groups we will charge, which groups we will not charge, and then come up with some kind of a fee schedule that would, that would be...
Yeah, again, this
Yeah.
is part of discussion. We have all our
Right.
other things to talk about too.
Well, but we wouldn't need to go to
Right.
what other towns charge until we decide whether or not we're going to charge who.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like we need some kind of a systematic approach
right, I
to all
agree,
of
and it's
this,
for this year.
which is what's
Again,
really
what
good
I-
about your proposal.
But what I
yeah.
did was I just put everything kind of together that's been going on in my mind for the last couple of weeks, and, after having two parents.
And this is
come
all
to-
there is.
It really
going
was
on in your
more,
mind.
but, there, so yeah, I guess that's, what does everyone think of this? And do we do a process like this? Do we have the discussion? Do we wait now for public comment to hear what other people want to contribute to our conversation?
I, for one, would really be very interested in the public comment. I'd like to hear what kind of revenue we anticipate bringing in with jamborees and other camps and clinics, like what we might be able to realize from that, just because, again, very challenging budget year. We're looking at some significant cuts. And if we're in a position where everybody can win, that's great, but I would just like to see the numbers.
I have a quick question about the pool. Our pool, does the town, the revenue that it collects from the pool and events held at the pool and parents or families who buy memberships, is that money put back in to the general fund, does anyone know? Or is that money used specifically, is that earmarked to
I
maintain the
believe it
pool?
goes to the general fund. My understanding on the town budget, and if anyone please verify this with, Sally, maybe you know, with the first selectman, is that when money comes in, they don't earmark it later on to say, we need to have a new roof, so let's earmark it for a
Right.
roof. Or we're gonna eventually need to have the concrete fixed in the pool.
Right.
It just goes into the general fund, and then when those repairs are needed, they either bond it or they take it out of what's needed. Is that correct, Sally?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. There. Any other questions?
I think it makes sense to hear what the
Yeah, I think
what the public has to say first.
So, I just want to find out, can I change the venue of this meeting and have public comment just on this section now?
I think if you presented,
Okay, so,
asked a motion from the board, you could.
okay, so I think what what I'm going to do, take a motion from the board to allow for public comment as it pertains to fields only at this time, and additional public comment will be after our regular meeting.
Before you do that, though, you have to take a motion to add to the agenda.
Yes, so may I have a motion to add this to the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Then may I have a motion to allow for public comment as it pertains to our discussion on the fields and the charges?
Do we want to make it sort of anything that relates to the fields, or what should and should not be charged for?
What I'd like.
And I don't know what's,
Yeah.
I don't know that I have a particular favorite there.
I think right now we're just talking about our proposal, what the cost of what people expect us to be making on a jamboree, cost on youth camps and clinics. Perhaps talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Have to go
Pardon?
the first and second for that.
Yeah.
So moved.
May I have a first? Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to allow for about 10 minutes of public comment regarding this. Who wants to speak first? And I ask you to identify yourself. You don't have to identify what program you're with, but just yourself.
Dave Mikas, 30 Central Avenue. I also am the youth president of the youth football program. I think I can answer a couple of your questions. I just have a couple of questions to ask you in terms of the process. You had mentioned scheduling will be done by the normal process. Currently, the scheduling for many of the youth programs is through the town of North Haven. It's through the Public Works Department.
Victor Palmer's group, right?
Yes. If that process will be different just for these fields, then please outline what the process will be. Will it be through Steve? Will it be through the Board of Ed and the Athletic Department?
It will be the same.
So we'll make out a schedule for the other fields that we use and include a schedule for the turf field use as well. Okay. That's number one, thank you. Number two, I think you need to be careful as far as your anticipation of a windfall of money from jamborees, and I think some of the numbers that you spoke of are greatly inflated. I can tell you that North Haven Youth Football participates in a jamboree at Cheshire High School annually, where there's 20 to 25 towns that are there, and each town is charged $300. So you can do the math on that. So that might be $6,000 or so dollars that is the expense for those teams to be there per town. There could be one team or there could be 5 teams, but it's a charge per town. So I do think there is some money to be made, but I do not think that you are going to see a windfall of money that will be sufficient to replace the turf fields 10 years from now.
So you
I
don't
think that's a very ambitious
So
goal.
you don't think we'd make $5,000 to $8,000 a year?
I think it's possible. I think it's
Not just youth, but also adult?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I just don't know that you want to bank on that
Sure.
being the replacement, factor. I know that from the youth perspective and from the town perspective, we've heard Mike Frieda many times talk about the town's willingness to pay for the annual maintenance fees of the turf field as well as the replacement cost 10 or so years from now. We just, again, question, why, if that is in fact the case, and if there could be some type of written agreement to that effect, does that change your willingness to open the fields up for use? That is one comment. The second comment is you're looking to decide who is going to use the fields for no cost and who might have to pay. There are a number of youth sports programs that are just for North Haven citizens, or the children of North Haven. For example, North Haven Youth Football is co-sponsored by the town of North Haven. North Haven Lacrosse is co-sponsored by, the soccer program is co-sponsored. So there are a number of youth sports programs that are just for North Haven children that are co-sponsored by the town of North Haven. I think that would be probably the dividing line as to who may have a fee waived and who...
Well, that was where, when I started with my proposal, I'm not sure if you were here, it was youth sports for North Haven.
Correct.
Because I did learn that the town, since all this, that the town has been sponsoring some of these programs, so it is a youth of North Haven, so that would be where the differential is.
Right. Well, I think the term co-sponsored is a big connection there. If you're co-sponsored by the town of North Haven, then that should mean something. If you are a program that has some North Haven kids, for example, there are some baseball teams in town that use some of the fields at no cost, Board of Ed fields at no cost, who have a majority of North Haven kids, and then kids from other towns
Sure.
rounding out the roster.
You mean like American Legion and things like
Correct.
that?
You may decide that that is a program you charge or you don't charge. But co-sponsored means that those programs are exclusively for the children of North Haven. And one last thing, in terms of the desirability of the fields for jamborees and such, right now the fields themselves are beautiful, but there are zero amenities for other towns to want to be here. The bleachers that we have are far from sufficient. We need our bleacher system that we talked about, and it may be a year or 2 or 5 until we get that. There's no bathrooms, that kind of thing. So I think we're a little bit away from having the facility be a very desirable facility to raise a lot of money for some of the reasons that you talked about.
Okay. Also, just to go back to your second point, we still are in conversations with Mr. Frieda about the town taking over, not the maintenance, month-to-month, year-to-year maintenance that we have, which I think we allocated how much money for that based on the contract we have with Spin? Do you recall? 10 to 12,000 a year, I'll just do that. But he has offered to do something when the fields need to be replaced as bonding there. So that's where we are with Mr. Frieda right now. We are in discussions with that.
Thank you. My name is Sal DeMeo, 260 Mill Road. I'm also on the board for football, but I have children that play lacrosse, basketball, and football in this town. So I had just two questions really, kind of on the cusp of what was talked about, was the current, right now, Board of Ed fields, such as soccer using Ridge Road, baseball using Green Acres, are, just to clarify, are not or are charged for the maintenance of those fees?
They are not charged.
So it was talked about of just the cleanup or maintenance after the use of the fields. I guess I'm just asking what the difference of that is on a grass field to a turf field. What makes that any different? I mean, the programs are always responsible for cleaning up the ground, so I just wonder why we would have to bring someone in special to do something on the turf fields compared to the
Well,
grass.
our people clean the fields up anyway if they have not been cleaned by the sports programs, which I'm sure that they are being cleaned by it. But honestly, it's a new field. They cost us a lot of money to maintain. We have to worry about, I noticed when I was reading some of the SOPs from other schools, you're not allowed to have sunflower seeds. You can't have certain shoes. You can't have gum. You can't have those type of things. So they're beautiful fields. We went through a lot to get them, and we want to maintain them. We don't want to 3 years from now have to worry about them looking a mess or the cost of replacing them and the maintenance. We want to ensure that our maintenance that we have with them every year, we don't have to pay extra for.
And then my last question was, in all the other bylaws that you posted on the agenda and that I've actually read through, every single one of them, just about, I think except for Cheshire doesn't spell it out, which makes it the discretion of the superintendent, puts on there for non-for-profit, so kind of to Dave's point and to your point earlier, non-for-profit, town use only leagues, these fees will be waived because they are not-for-profit, which, from what I understand, most of these leagues, before I even moved to town, used to be ran by the Board of Ed, and it cost a salary and everything else for someone to actually run those. So there's now volunteers running these leagues for free for the kids. What would be the differentiator for non-for-profit compared to the other ones? I mean, I guess that's kind of a, to me.
But that's
no-brainer.
where we're looking right now, where we're saying the youth, the North Haven sponsored youth are not for profit. Do I think, but for having a men's soccer league, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, 100%, no.
Yeah, that would be totally different. That's where I
just
brought
want
up.
to throw that word in there because it's, to me, a big differentiator from just the town co-sponsored even. Non-for-profit is a big part because there's nobody on that board or involved in that league that's making any money or getting paid. This is strictly volunteers putting time in for the kids of this town.
Right.
And then also, so in all these schools, even ones without turf fields like North Branford, which I have a copy of their bylaws, they all have a policy for fee schedules for even just, like you said, the theater and what that goes to. And I'd imagine anything with the school use, it would be for maintenance, for janitors, because you have to have someone at the school to turn the lights on, turn the lights off, clean up the gym when they're done or the auditorium. I guess just, do you guys, I didn't see anything on
We have
North
a
Haven.
policy for everything except turf fields.
Okay.
We have our policy, thank you, Bob, for getting that for me, proposed policy 3515, community use of school facilities, but it does not include the synthetic fields.
So it does include non-synthetic fields, or?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
So what is the fee for non-synthetic fields right now then? For in-town or out-of-town?
Elementary school fields are $100 for, this is user groups 1 through 3, and user group 1 are school functions under the direction of the principal. User group 2 is Town of North Haven departments, town government, and group 3 is nonprofit community organizations. So for those groups, in terms of athletic fields, elementary school fields were $100, middle school fields were $150, and high school athletic complex fields were $300. That's as it currently stands. What I'm looking at here is what's been proposed.
So does that mean that soccer's been paying $100 a day for Ridge Road?
No one has been charged.
So I guess what would be the difference, again, from this field to what soccer's been doing at Ridge Road? Because it is, from what I understand, the Board of Ed does line those fields and hasn't cut. So where is that? I mean, if you guys are covering the cost, I guess, what's the difference?
The town lines. I'm Brenda Howlett, the field director at North Haven Soccer Club. The town
Lines those?
It lines at Ridge Road.
Okay. So I guess what the difference, would just my question, I guess, my last question, is what the difference is between those fields and the synthetic? I know they're new, and I understand that, but they're still fields for the kids to use. So
Cost
why
of
would one program?
replacement.
I think also that this policy has been in place long before us. It's just never been implemented. And so, there are fees for the use of an auditorium. There are fees for the use of a library or classroom. I just don't think that the policy has ever been implemented.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Anderson, good evening. My name is Joe Porto. You and I had a chance to speak during the week, and I sent you an email. I hope that you received it.
I did not receive it.
You did not receive it? That's unfortunate. So, depending on how much time is left, I do have a few people here that can speak to the revenues that can be realized through the rental of the field. I would surmise that numbers that you mentioned were eminently reasonable. Like Mr. Mike has said, I don't think we're going to get home to replace the fields, but I certainly think something in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $8,000 annually would be reasonable. What I'd like to talk to you about is some of your suggestions, the majority of which I believe the youth lacrosse program would be pleased with. But what's important is that we advance this to a decision, at least for this year, because one of the things I mentioned in my letter is scheduling has already happened. Youth lacrosse, they're playing now. We start like April 1st. So you and I had a conversation that we may be cleared to use the fields as of, I think, the first or second day of April. As I hear from Mr. Blumenthal just 10 minutes ago, I'm not sure that those signals may be crossing. So hopefully we can get that addressed tonight and cleared up, so at least we can get our kids, and by that I mean the kids of this town, out on our fields and playing and having fun. I would, so just real quick, I would support not charging the co-sponsored youth programs for the town of North Haven, have no trouble with charging in-town camps. Jamborees, I completely agree with. Adult leagues, completely agree with. Scheduling in terms of middle school and high school certainly would have the priority. Scheduling is a bit of an animal that needs to be wrestled to the ground. I thought Mr. Blumenthal's office was going to control that. We can certainly work through Victor's office if that's where it is. But again, that's an area of misunderstanding because I've had a chance to speak to both. So if we can leave tonight with some clear policy on that, that would be wonderful. The key card, I think that's a fine idea. I would have to speak to our president about whether or not youth lacrosse would be willing to front the money on that. I hope that football would jump in as well, so I'm sure we can figure that out. Insurance certificates are a no-brainer, and lighting. The fields, and for those people that don't know, I'm part of the building committee along with Dave and a number of people here. So we have, in Goldie, we've put a lot of time into making these fields a reality for our town. So part of the beauty of the synthetics is they could have been used for quite some time, and they can be used for extended periods like into the night. So hopefully a part of this conversation includes being able to utilize the lights that surround the field complex. So unless you have any questions for me. I guess one other point of clarification. So now that the high school boys and girls lacrosse team is able to use our synthetic turf field, they're not using some of the natural grassed fields.
My understanding, and Steve, you can answer that, they're using both. That was my understanding. I could be wrong.
When there are conflicts, and because we have a fifth team, we have a boys varsity, boys JV, and we have a girls varsity, girls JV, and a girls freshman, there will be times where we will need the complex when there are scheduling conflicts with games on the turf fields. But that's not necessarily on a consistent basis, but there will be times.
So I guess the question that I'm asking is, can the youth program also have the ability to use the natural grass fields?
Well, have you in the past?
Well, we've used overflow parking for the fair. So the answer is no, but that's because we didn't have the synthetic turf fields, which field space in this town is very limited, and this is a tremendous opportunity to take some of the pressure off of that. And facility staff, my understanding is, wants to rest some of our natural grass fields. But I believe that we were told that the complex, for example, because the high school is going to use that from time to time, so that field's not going to be rested. So if it's not going to be rested and it's available, we would like the opportunity to have our kids play on it as well.
Steve, what field is being rested this year?
Originally, we wanted to rest the field that Joe's referring to, the all-purpose field at the complex, but after discussing it with the lacrosse coaches and Phil Diana, it was determined that this season at least, we're going to leave it available to those programs and potentially youth programs.
So Vanacore, I think, is going dark.
Yeah, we'd like to rest Vanacore.
We're going to rest Vanacore for the winter,
We'd like
summer?
to rest Vanacore, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you for reaching out to me, too. I appreciate
Thank you
that.
for taking the call.
Anyone else?
I want to make just one comment. Steve Blumenthal, 49 Winchester Drive, Athletic Director at the high school. The one issue that I want to just bring to light is for any of the organizations that want to use the fields, including my programs, we have an inability to charge ticket prices because it's such an open venue. You can watch, I was at the Jamboree this week, and the lacrosse program, boys lacrosse high school program had a Jamboree, and I walked around the entire field, and you can stand anywhere. It's such a beautiful field, such an open venue that you can watch the games from anywhere. So my proposal, what I'd like the board to think about is putting some kind of barrier where the sidewalks are, so that there has to be some way to, for lack of a better word, corral the fans to sit in the bleachers. Of course, like at the complex, I have many fans who stand outside the complex to watch a soccer game or a baseball game because they don't want to go inside the complex. And if people choose to do that, they could stand in the parking lot and watch a game. But we also have to have some ability to at least make it different from entering the complex. And if you want to stand at the black fence that's currently there, then you can do that. But in order to get there, I really think that there needs to be some other barrier. Maybe not around the entire lacrosse synthetic complex, but definitely something. Whether it's an orange fence, which can easily be jumped, I would recommend something higher. Of course, I know it wasn't budgeted for, but if we want to have this venue be state championship caliber, so that we can host a neutral site state championship soccer game, field hockey game, lacrosse game for CIAC, there's no way that they're going to come to our venue without this kind of barrier, because they aren't going to be able to make their money. They charge $10 for adults and $5 for students and senior citizens. They're not going to come because we don't have this barrier that I'm referring to.
Can that barrier be a temporary barrier?
Well, I mean,
I'm just
I
asking-
guess you could do that,
Yeah.
but again, I mean, a 4-foot orange fence, snow fence, I don't think is going to do the job. And it's expensive to put a solid, permanent fence around either the whole complex or even just maybe 3/4 of the complex, maybe leaving the backside toward the middle school softball field open. But I don't know. It's something that I'd like you to consider as a board, because I've wondered about this for, since the turf has been finished, how the revenue I generate from charging at football games, soccer games, all of our different sports helps to supplement my budget. And, I don't have enough money from the budget that I'm given to buy all my equipment and everything else that goes into it. And a lot of that revenue generated, I use to supplement. And I worry about how much I'm going to be able to get for, especially if there's no permanent bleachers, if we just have these, you can't even see over the fence when you sit in the portable bleacher, because the fence is, 5 feet high.
Then what I'm going to ask you to do, Steve, is you bring up a really good point. I'm going to ask you if you can take a look at seeing what kind of materials are out there and what the costs are, and bring it to Dr. Cronin to talk to us, because you bring up a good point, especially for the CIAC people.
Sure.
Then let us know that at a future meeting, or let Dr. Cronin know that.
Thank you.
Mr. Blumenthal, can I just ask you one quick question? How much capacity do you know how much capacity the current temporary bleachers offer?
Not much, I would say.
100? Ooh, okay.
100.
Yikes.
Each bleacher is about maybe 6 rows high and maybe 10 people. Yeah, so Dave's estimate is probably accurate. It takes me a little bit more time to figure it out.
I will say this, in lieu of cooperation and teamwork, I'm sure many of the youth sports programs would love to make a donation to our athletic program on an annual basis in a show of cooperation and appreciation for time on the turf.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, we can get that in writing too.
We got it on tape.
So I have one more general question.
To Steve?
Sorry.
That's okay.
I can ask you later, but we're talking about a dispensation until November. We're talking about pausing until November.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because, I'm sorry, I'm not an athlete, is that like sports timing? I don't know, is that like a season of sports?
Well, I just
timing?
put it through that because if you take youth lacrosse, I think they play through
June.
June. Youth football starts now and plays through November.
Okay.
Soccer starts in the spring and plays forever.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, John Uwecki, 26 Marble Road. About 18 years ago, myself and a few others started the youth lacrosse program. And it's been an interesting and fun experience. We've had hundreds, if not thousands of kids that have gone through the program. The current problem that we have is that our practice facility is, as Joe said, it is the overflow parking lot for the fairgrounds. So it is not exactly what I would consider ideal conditions for children to be playing on, but it's what we have available. For 7 years, we paid to have it cut and have it lined, and every year we get together and do an initial lining, and then have some assistance. So I'm sure it's not a problem most people are aware of, but we literally don't have enough space to play. And so we have to go outside of town fields, outside of Board of Ed fields, and use a overflow parking lot, which is a bit of a problem. So the concern that I have right now is that I've attended a number of other meetings, and there's more discussion about how to keep kids off the field than on the field. And I was at a meeting at the other building where it was talked about how kids were caught on the field, which I understand, but I mean, to a certain degree, the fence is designed to keep balls in, not bodies out. And if you're a child and there's a field like that, and you didn't want to get on it and play, I'd be a little concerned. And, you know, it's been 143 days since it was approved. Our warranty on the field is 8 years. We've used up about 4.8, and as Joe said, we need to have some progression tonight because these discussions about jamborees, all these things, I think about it, Dave's point about facilities, you couldn't run a jamboree without bathrooms. You have girls, I mean, you know, you could have boys, but you'd still have problems. If you think about it to a certain degree. We don't have the facilities to do that. So it's kind of like, you know, trying to do a cost analysis of running a jamboree. We have a member of our board who is involved in Yale's athletic facilities. They have 14 fields. It's Yale. People want to have a jamboree at Yale. This is North Haven. That field is beautiful. But nobody knows about it because who's used it? And I think we have to wait a while before that draw really comes in. I think the layout between the complex and the field would be ideal, but the ability to do something right now, scheduling-wise, we can't even schedule our current season, and we're starting right now. So I think, you know, that's a big concern.
If I may interrupt you, where the jamborees came up was when we were in discussions about this field. Let me talk, we talked about the costing. Many people from the sports, I'm gonna say, family came to us and did say, we can get revenue from jamboree. So as we were going through, when I put together another proposal, that was one of my thoughts, that, okay, maybe that will help offset that in the long run. So it wasn't something that I automatically said, hey, jamboree, we just had one for high schools, let's think about it. It was something that this sports family brought to us. But since I have you here, can I just ask you one quick question, because then we need to get on with our other part, continue our discussion. When I had mentioned that in-town and out-of-town youth camps and clinics, does your organization do clinics and camps for your kids in the summer?
Well, we do like a preseason clinic, and we used to be able to do it at Quinnipiac or at Yale. They would let us on because at the time they were the only turf fields available. But they're not. It's not a clinic that we charge. It's just to get the kids going to a certain degree. But there are private organizations that will run a clinic where they'll bring in some pro athletes to come in and run that, and they'll do it for a day or 2 days, but that's an established venue once it gets going, and it's, I think these are all things that are possible, but, you know, my concern is, we just dropped our registration this year, and so then there was discussions about the additional cost. We will not be able to pay for a custodian to watch the field. We won't be able to do that. And I checked the information you sent about Shelton and Cheshire. They have grass fields. So if they want to use the turf, they can. Wallingford, if you schedule it through the rec department, they don't pay. If you go as a resident of the town and schedule it, yes, but that's not through the rec department. I spoke to Wallingford, let's see, Guilford, they do not pay. Hamden does not pay. Clinton does not pay. Madison, the person I talked to was a director way back when I was involved a little bit more, and they did not pay at that time. And it was, they have, Board of Ed runs the field by hand, and then the rec runs their surf field. But it's the same scheduling that we have in that, you know, the AD handles the school activities, and then anything above and beyond that goes through the rec center. So,
Okay. Take a look at Shelton High School again, though. Just take a look at that when you get a chance.
well, I have. I talked to them today, and you know, their point to me was, yeah, if we do want to use it, and they've used it for like adult leagues and things, and they paid for that. But he said our youth uses the fields that they have. They have grass fields.
There's
So-
another stadium for them to use.
Yeah.
The same thing with football, they don't need to use the turf
Okay.
because they have something available to them.
Okay.
And Cheshire's the same way, and Branford does not charge as well.
Yeah, so there's Bartland Park across the street from Cheshire, so it's when you want to use that, yeah, I think that's different. In our case, where else are we gonna go? A parking lot.
I'm gonna, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And I remember when you started that, we used to have soccer, we used to have lacrosse practice behind Aces.
That's right.
One more question. Okay, go ahead, Sally. And then we need to move, we need to just have further discussion and move on.
Yes, thank you. Sally Buemi, 5 Blossom Drive. It was my understanding always, based on comments about a year ago at a Board of Selectmen meeting, that all private leagues, youth or otherwise, would be paying to play on the turf fields. We used to have regular updates about the middle school building project at the Board of Selectmen meetings, and at one meeting, and again, about a year ago, and Anita, if you need me to, I'll find the minutes and email them to you. It could have been a year, it could have been 9 months, could have been 15 months, you know how time flies. But let me say, about a year ago, when questions were coming up about replacement of the turf fields, Mr. Johns and Mr. D'Onofrio, who was in attendance at that particular meeting, both said that private leagues, without any differentiation between youth or adult, would be paying to play on the turf fields. And that was always my understanding. Now, I understand you're putting it off because you said the summer to think about it. I mean, we've known for a long time these fields were coming. I'm not quite sure why, only in the past couple of weeks, it's been considered. But if you need the time, I respect that. So if the first year is for free, then fine. But I think, there were some very good questions asked about what is the differentiation between other fields and the turf fields. And the difference is the turf fields have to be replaced. And in my mind, and I'm glad Jennifer brought it up earlier tonight, the swimming pool, I think is a very good consideration, because there's a lot of similar things between the pool and the turf fields. The pool has special upkeep expenses. It has special maintenance expenses. We just spent capital expenditures for replacing tiles and whatnot. And families and individual families and single individuals, couples who are taxpayers in town must pay to swim there because of its uniqueness. And that is the situation here. These turf fields are unique. They have to be replaced. And I just want to say, I've been involved, as you know, in North Haven sports for decades. I was a North Haven High School varsity athlete, and I've been involved, I worked for Park and Rec for 6 summers, and I was involved in North Haven girls and women's softball programs from 1965 to 2009 as a player, a sponsor, an umpire, everything, a coach for the junior girls. And for about 20 years, I was a sponsor in the North Haven Women's Softball League. We played on Thursday nights. We had about 12 teams. And that was a North Haven league. It wasn't co-sponsored. It was a North Haven Park and Rec league. And as a sponsor, I had to pay about $700 each year to play. And I wish I had one of those sponsor sheets that they used to give us at the beginning of every season, because it would always say the sponsor fee is blah to help defer the cost of the lights and the maintenance. And I never said, well, wait a minute, I'm a taxpayer, and which I was. Here we were participating in a special program, and again, that was a town league, and we paid the money. And I also had to pay for the umpires, and I had to have a new ball every game. It was a BYOB, bring your own pristine softball every game. You remember. And, so over those 20 years, I probably dished out $20,000 to participate in a town-run league as a sponsor. And I accepted that. and I didn't claim, well.
Is that an adult town league?
It was adult. This was, when I was I was a player in and up in the junior leagues, yes, I did that. This
So
was
that's
an
where I'm
adult league.
differentiating.
But, right, but I'm just trying to say, there was charges because of the lights. Back then, the lights were new. The lights came in at Blakesley in 1974. It was very exciting to finally have lights. And so they had to be paid for, and because there was something special about them. So the reason why I'm bringing this little historical fact up is there's something special about the turf fields. They have to be replaced, and it was always my understanding, and I will pull those minutes from the Board of Selectmen, that all private leagues would pay a fair and reasonable fee. I have great respect for all the volunteers that run these leagues. I know they're very well-run, they're dedicated to our youth, just as I was in my prime 20 and 30 years ago. I have great respect for them, but these are unique fields, and it was always my understanding that there would be charges to help defray the cost of replacement. Thank you.
Okay, board, again, for proposals, we have discussions. Want to know what your thought is. I do think that with these sports programs starting next week, we need to have some of these scheduled. I had thought that had started already, but I was away on business last week, so I may have missed that. What are some people's opinions?
So my thought about the funding, the revenue generation right from the start was that it was not going to cover everything. There's no way we could raise all that money. But I looked at this as supplemental funding. At the end of the day, there's something that's available. I know Mike has promised to do something regarding the replacement cost, but no one knows where Mike is going to be in the next 10, 15 years. If the town wants to do something in writing or something, that confirms that, yes, at that point, they will look for some way to cover at least most, if not all, of the replacement cost. That's fine, but I look at the revenue as replacement. If you do $5,000 a year, that's something. If you multiply that by the next 8 or 10 years, how long it takes before we need to replace it. So I'm comfortable with the non-profit leagues, using the facility. I'm okay with the town co-sponsored leagues using the facility. I'm okay with the key access. I remember when we talked briefly about the key access, my thing was regarding trying to, basically the chain of custody, and also responsibility. So if something is damaged, you know exactly, who damaged the vesting. And there's also the insurance aspect also, which is covered. So I'm comfortable with the key access. And then regarding jamborees and things like that, I think at the end of the day, we should also look at the outside the box things we can do regarding revenue generation. It's not just jamborees and things like that. So I think at the end of the day, maybe Tina working with some members of the board or maybe some sports groups to think about outside the box ways, advertising or something to generate additional revenues up till the end of November. But I'm comfortable with those ideas so far.
Thank you. So when you talk about supplemental funding, Goldie, so you were talking about, so if we go with what Mr. Frieda said, that the town would be responsible for the replacement of those fields in 10 years, that he would bond them, or whomever would be in office at that time would bond them. That was a conversation that he had said. Correct, Sally?
That's news to me. I only heard him say publicly that the town was considering taking over the maintenance of the fields. This is the first that I'm hearing.
Yeah, he has
that
also
the town
talked
would be bonding.
to the board,
That
has
doesn't mean
talked
the
to us
town is
about
paying
that.
for it. That means the taxpayers are paying for it.
So,
And-
can I,
Okay.
I'm just mentioning what we
That
had all
has not
talked
been
about,
said
and I
publicly.
think one or two people here alluded to as they were speaking. So when we talk about that supplemental funding, we're talking about whatever money that the Board of Ed should take in from these fields goes into a special account, and then when those fields have to be replaced, we take out that money, whatever we have, and maybe that's then where the town then says, okay, you need $5,000 more, you need $10,000 more, we'll pay for that.
Exactly. So money that's set aside specifically for that replacement purpose. Because like I said, you know, we don't know what's gonna happen in the next 10 years, you know? So even if there's something that's signed by the town and agreed by the town,
Right,
we don't
agreed.
know what the financial situation will be for the town in the next 10 years. Hopefully it's in a better place, you know, but we don't know. So just as a backup, you know, we just have to plan towards, you know, setting something aside in a lockbox just until the 8-10 years time, and then we'll see what's available, you know, because at the end of the day, maybe the town will say, okay, we'll foot X amount, but you need to produce something on your side. At least we have something to present to meet them at some point, you know, to cover the replacement cost.
So I have a couple of quick thoughts. First of which is, if we're gonna look at roughly $40,000 a year, or I'm sorry, $5,000 a year over 8 years, roughly $40,000, that's a drop in an $800,000 to $1.6 million bucket for the replacement cost. So I certainly would not expect jamborees and youth organizations to cover the full cost of the replacement, because these fields are being used by the Board of Education as well. But I would expect sort of a proportional contribution there, because this is a school board, and I think that we have a responsibility to our students to safeguard certain funds that have been appropriated to us for academics and scholastic endeavors. And I worry that the difference between that $800,000 replacement cost and the $40,000, maybe $80,000 would potentially be crippling to a department that right now is, we're not in a positive position for this budgetary year. So while I want to support youth sports and I want to support youth leagues, I think we have a responsibility to the taxpayers of North Haven to weigh what our job is here, and it's to educate the children of North Haven. I think if we can look at it as supplemental, that's good. I think if we can come to an agreement where everybody feels comfortable with what the charges are going to be, I would support that. But right now, I don't think I can support saying we're probably not going to get jamborees because we don't have bleachers and we don't have some kind of a barrier to corral folks into those bleachers. This does not seem like it's something that I would support.
So, can you clarify, what exactly is your concern? What's your concern about the proposal so far?
So my concern is the proposal is that there's going to be wear and tear on the fields, and there's a cost per hour for wear and tear on the fields. So if there's not going to be some kind of compensation for that cost, for the lights, for if we do need a custodian, if we don't, that's great. We'll put that one to the side. If we have people who are ready to use key cards, awesome. But I'm worried about the additional financial burden that will be placed on the Board of Education in order to be inclusive of youth sports. And I don't like saying this, because I would really love to be able to offer, like, youth sports to be able to use this without a cost, but there is a cost for each and every individual hour of play on these fields. The maintenance is per every 20 to 100 hours of play, depending on which field maintenance guide you look at. So I think we need to, in my opinion, it's not responsible to say nothing. I would certainly say that youth leagues should get a steep discount on use of the turf fields. But if there is going to be lighting costs associated with the use of the fields, if there is going to be maintenance costs associated with the use of the fields, we can't take that money out of educational funding.
I have two things. First, if we're not going to use a grounds person, if coaches are going to be allotted key cards, is that something that's potentially grievable with the custodians union? Are all fields covered that are under their jurisdiction? Are those all under their umbrella, or are we able to say certain fields will require a custodian, certain don't? I just want to...
The only thing that I know, Dr. Cronin, is Montouise is the only one where we require a custodian.
Okay, so as far as for grounds, we don't have to worry about...
No, 'cause
okay,
we don't
that's
have
good.
grounds people at the games.
Okay. The other thing was, I think during the discussion of the field, way back, one of the things that Mr. Frieda told us, and one of the things that was potentially swaying to folks, was there was going to be a commitment by the town.
Right.
So we can't go with just a verbal commitment. I think we need to sit down and really talk to them about these sorts of things.
Okay.
Sorry, my name's Danielle Morphy. I'm on Clintonville. I wasn't here in the beginning. Was it disclosed, Anita, did you put the proposal together, or was the proposal put forth to you?
So it wasn't a proposal. Basically, what I did is I wrote down a couple of suggestions.
Sure.
In addition to all of our field information that we have, so we're calling it a proposal. What I put down, I don't know why we're calling it a proposal, probably because I wrote it. I just put down bullet points for discussion purposes, and that's where this has all come to.
Okay, because I know a couple middle school
Point of
building
order, are we
committee
back to public
members.
comments?
No, we are not.
So a couple middle school building committee members had reached out to you, so that's why I was under the impression this was like a proposal from some of the members, which to me, just.
It was not, Danielle.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just for her clarification, that I did speak to Mr. Porto late last week, I think on Friday, Thursday or Friday.
Thursday or Friday, I believe.
Last week about jamborees. Well, I want that to be clear to everyone here for that. What about you, Randy? Any comments?
I always have a comment. I have a couple of different thoughts, and I'm glad that we listened to public comment because they brought a couple of things up that honestly I wasn't aware of. One of the things that Mr. Uecki brought up was the fact that the kids are, even though it's a town lacrosse organization, that the kids are playing on the fairground parking lot, and
That's where rugby plays too, by the way.
Yeah.
Our school rugby team plays
and
there.
even though that's not a Board of Ed team, they're still our kids and they need to be safe. So that really disturbs me that that's where they're playing. So I think that we do need to do whatever we can do to provide safe fields for our kids to play. We really are stuck between a rock and a hard place because it is very expensive. It was a huge financial commitment to put these fields in. We certainly want to maintain them the best that we can. But we are not going to make a ton of money in the first year of these, nor are we going to have to spend a ton of money in the first year of the use of these fields. So my thought is that there is more of an urgency to put into place a procedure to get them used because we have them. And then really take our time and do the fee schedule so that it's right and fair. I agree, like some kind of subcommittee.
Not
with-
just of the board.
No, right, with coaches and youth programs and whoever else might have, people who have
A vested interest.
a vested interest and the appropriate knowledge to be able to contribute.
Correct.
I agree with Amanda, though, that I don't like the idea of taking money from our educational funds to support non-school functions. So there has to be some kind of middle there, because I don't want to have to do without hiring a paraprofessional or getting more books or something because we need to pay for the lights that are being used at a night game. I just don't think that that's fair. But there has to be a reasonable way to reach that point so that this is a win-win for everybody. I also think too, kind of on an aside, is that with the fee schedule that we have here for the elementary school fields, while I agree with the people that said that maintaining grass fields is certainly a lot easier and cheaper than the turf fields, because you can, mow gum off of grass fields. When somebody spills gum or something, you can't do it on turf as easily. It's just different things like that. But if we are not going to put into play these fees for the elementary natural grass field, we should just take them out. Because if we're not going to do it,
Right.
it shouldn't
It's
even
never been
exist.
done.
I agree.
So that should definitely be something that we should look at. But again, just to kind of reiterate, it's hard. Sports are expensive and they're part of all of our kids' lives, my kids included. And I think it's an important part of their childhood. There are a lot of lessons that come from them. So I think that any additional fees to families and to organizations is tough. But we're not going to figure this out tonight. What we can figure out, though, I think, is the appropriate procedures so that these folks can get their games scheduled and these kids can get playing. And then we can take the time to do everything else the right way instead of rushing into it.
What I would suggest is, So we identified a timeline here tonight through November. Okay, so if we could begin to schedule and allow people to use the field, and simultaneously, starting almost immediately, bring a group together. Everybody who has a vested interest should be at the table. It's not a Board of Education field, it's not a town field, it's people from the youth groups, people from the board, people from the town need to sit together and decide what are we going to do about this investment that we've made. And I think that if we can pull that group together, which I don't see a problem with, and get that done by the November timeline, while they're able to use them this spring, it's sort of a compromise for everybody in listening to what everyone is saying tonight. Because Amanda raises a good point in terms of, we're looking at $800,000. We could have a lot of jamborees for $800,000. I mean, we'd be jamboreeing day and night. And so I would suggest that, again, everybody that is vested has to talk with one another. Otherwise, we're...
Okay, in the meantime, though, can I suggest, though, that if we're not charging for teams outside of a North Haven's team, that there is a person who is the go-to person during that time of use, so that if there is an issue, we know who that person is. So if it's in the moment, or if it's 3 hours later and we realize that somebody has sunflower seeds all over the field, we need to have a person as a go-to person responsible.
I think we met, myself and Mr. Blumenthal and Mr. Diana and Park and Rec met about scheduling the fields. And I thought it was pretty clear at that time that the district schedules the district events, and that the town schedules, Mr. De Palma in particular, schedules the town events. And so I don't see any of that changing. So my point is that I would see Victor as being the go-to person then, as the Director of Public Works.
What about that key card? What does people think about that? And the other thing I'd like to throw out there, again, this was all for discussion purposes. You brought up something for me to think about is sponsorships. I mean, is it something that we can look at as a sponsorship for the organizations to say, you know what, Board of Ed, here's $1,500 a year for use of the fields, to put into your account that you want to use in the future. I mean, maybe that's something also we can talk about.
We should build a fence to hang banners from first. We gotta build that fence. So you can hang up some
Other
banners.
towns, just as a point of clarification, like Surf Club, their outside fences are sponsored by businesses who would have banners on them.
Softball.
To offset those costs.
So we're gonna build a wall and have somebody else pay for it?
That's a nice one.
I'm expecting 2 more, just to let people know this, and then we're going to go from here. 2 more schools are going to be sending me their charges, what they charge and how they charge, and who they charge. The brunt of what I've looked at is most of the schools are not charging their town youth organizations.
Are we separating out also towns within our Durgan towns
Yes.
that are not? Okay.
Yeah, we have done that. So I'm expecting for 2 more, which when those come in, I'll send out to the board to take a look at, because as you all saw, and those who looked at it online, these charges are
All over the place, right.
Yeah.
So to just kind of sum up, so we can, as several people suggested, make a decision for tonight, can we decide that until further discussion, the fields will be able to be used without any charges, right? But we need to have some kind of system put into place where there is a person held responsible for the use of the field while they're being used. So that is the go-to person during that time and afterwards, should there be an issue. Is that something that we can put into place so that Steve can start, or whoever the Park and Victor can
Yes.
I don't
And
know.
at
What
this
else do we need to
point,
decide tonight for them to be able to
And
start
at
using
this point,
it?
I would think that it would be the people who, John, Mike, are you the heads of your groups? And Brenda, you're the head of the soccer too?
I am, yes, I'm the field director for North Haven Soccer.
Okay, so then you would be the one right now who would be responsible of the
Yes,
soccer group?
I am responsible for the fields and I work through the town, Victor.
Yeah, that's,
So I'd like to just see if we can maybe potentially get I agree that we should be working together with folks within the town and folks within the youth leagues to come up with what's going to be that balance and provide the win-win. But I'd like to try to provide it sooner than November, so
Yeah, I
that
would
folks can
too.
plan appropriately.
Yeah.
Sure.
No,
absolutely.
their registration rates
Well,
appropriately.
this is March. If we got, I think that if we got going with that, there could certainly be something that we could come to agreement on in a couple of months.
So prior to fall sports.
Yeah, I think we can have a first discussion in June. 'Cause also remember, we have budget next week, and then in May, and we all know, those of us on the board, and we've alluded to it tonight, that, I'm not speaking of the school, we all saw it in the paper, that we went in for 4.02. They're suggesting perhaps coming down to 3%. We saw that.
But the group or the subcommittee can work on its own. Though.
Yes,
They don't
they can.
know, so they can start next month working on it. So it's not going to interrupt our
Yeah,
business.
so why don't we do that? Why don't we put this committee together, and whomever wants to be on it, I'm going to ask you to reach out to Dr. Cronin via email.
That would be fine.
Or Steve, actually.
No, I wasn't raising my pen.
No, but I'm just saying this, Steve, it might not be a bad idea, I don't know if you have time.
I'm happy to do it.
And I also, Sally, I would like you to be on that too.
Sure.
Okay, I think that would be a
That's
good idea
great.
too, because your thoughts on what you said, and I would like that, if you find it, that tape, you can just call me and tell me when it was. I'll look
Sure.
it up. We have a couple of people, we work on that, and you put your team together, and then we sit down and, say, early in June, we talk again.
But for what you're saying, what Randy was saying, what do we put in place for now, for people that need to use it now?
So now what we're putting in place is that we'll have to talk with Steve. I know you put together a code of conduct.
Phil and I did a list of turf commandments, yes.
Okay, yeah, I have not read that.
On stone tablets.
We'll take a look at that, but I'd like to talk to Mike. John? John?
Eric's
our
president.
Oh, you are, I'm sorry, you are?
Eric Morrow.
Okay, Eric, hi, nice to meet you. Eric and Brenda, we get them on that team. Mike, you're still the president there?
Dave, yes.
Yeah, Dave, why don't we call you Mike? Because it's
Mike
Micus, sorry. And during this process, I spoke to Dave Micus way too much, so you'd think I'd remember his name when they were building those fields. And then we'll have Steve and one or two people from the board and other people out there who want to do it. And we'll put down our list, and we'll also put down what we expect as a board, but we'll get together and we'll do that. At this point, this is the best compromise that I feel that we can give, as we had not put anything in concrete, and we want the students to be able to play on the fields. Yes?
Okay, I just want to say a comment and a question. The comment is Randy's idea, or just the talk about having someone kind of like monitor the field. I think each of the organizations that's present, and even maybe there's some that are not present, have a vested interest in making sure that when they leave the field, it's clean. So I would hope that, just as an example, let's say football was there, whoever's in charge of that football session would look around, make sure that it's pristine, that there's no water bottles, there's no leftovers, seeds or anything. And if there is, the next person who comes in, and typically it would be one after another, that person would say, hey, notice that, and maybe discuss it with the previous sport. If it's at the end of the night, maybe that's when somebody from the school district or the town, whatever we decide, comes in and surveys the entire field. So the vested organizations will know, who made the mess, for lack of a better phrase. So that's just a thought. And then
Just for reference, that's done with Vanacore now when football uses it. We go to under the bleachers, we clean the opposite bleachers. We have our coaches and board members walk around to make sure that all garbage is put away, the concession stands clean properly, everything's put where the town wants it for garbage bags. It's something that happens on a regular basis, as well as with Gateway when we use practice.
And just if I could, the question is, some organizations have talked to me about scheduling the turf fields, which was before there was some decision on how they were going to be scheduled. So do those organizations have to now go to Victor to reschedule those events?
Did you schedule those events?
We scheduled them before you and I conversed about, and then you told me to stop scheduling.
Then you need to, we'll need to talk with Victor and just transfer it in,
Okay.
that information in. But the town, Victor needs to be responsible, as he is currently, for community use of the fields.
Okay. And the only other point I would make is somehow Victor and I will have to share calendars so I can see what he has.
Well, he
and
has,
can see
he
what I
talked
have.
about, he has some program that they use.
Yeah, but I don't have access to that.
So we can find out what that is and how we might have access to it.
Thank you.
And for this committee that's going to be put together, I'm going to suggest, based on that there seems to be some misunderstanding of what Mr. Frieda had said, I'd like to make sure that the committee talks to Mr. Frieda, or has him come to your first meeting to talk about where they talked about the town. Okay?
I think we all kind of want the same thing. We want the kids to play, we want them to be safe. We want to maintain our fields, but we wouldn't be responsible if we didn't really take the time to do this appropriately. And really, as the next year goes on, you talk about that additional list, I don't know the right term, but the alternate list. I mean, if there is money and there is an alternate list and we do buy bleachers, then it would just make it even more appealing to other people to come and use them. So I think the next year is a learning and growing year, but we have to do it safely and responsibly.
I also think that there's a building project underway for concession stands and.
Right, from the town.
At Vanacor.
But that's not for the turf complex.
Right.
Okay.
The other thing that, since it's brought up, we need a scoreboard definitely for our game field, which we're calling the west field, and the east field, which is closer to the high school. I mean, that could use one too, but it's
We
not
don't have
necessarily.
scoreboards?
We don't have a scoreboard. One idea was to move one that we're
Right.
currently not using from, for example, Brookfield has a scoreboard, which I don't think has ever been used. Move that from Brookfield to, it's a solar one, which is something that was discussed because I know there was no interest in putting a big gaping hole in the driveway to the middle school.
So Steve, you've identified a lot of things tonight. You talked about the fence, you've talked about barriers, you've talked about a scoreboard. I think that those things all come to the table with this group. I don't think we're going to be able to solve that this evening. I think that the goal tonight is to let people know that they'll be available for use. And then we go from there.
My assumption is that as we're allowing them to be available for use, that we'll be monitoring the costs associated with the use.
Yeah.
That can help us inform decisions down the road to make sure that we're not.
Maybe we can set up something, some sort of a, I don't
Cost
know,
analysis.
some format that we can follow, that we're consistent throughout.
Can you think of one off the top of your head? One that we could work, something we could work on, maybe we could put to.
I have lots of templates.
Yeah.
I can build you one real quick too. no
That's what I
worries.
thought, that'd be
Good.
great.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do
You got it.
that.
Is Johnson Control able to separate out any of that stuff?
I don't know.
No?
But we can check.
Per
We should have a good
facility?
baseline now though, right? Because
Yeah.
we have
So we could just
baseline
see
now
the
for
agenda.
Board of Ed only activities, and then
Yep.
we'll be able to see the lift above that.
Did we speak to Victor about the natural grass field as well?
Yeah, Victor would be the one responsible for all non-school scheduling,
Thank you.
my understanding.
Yes, yeah.
So do we have to make a motion for this?
Do I have to approve all this? I don't think so, do we?
I don't think we do. I think that we can just.
Yeah, at
do
this
that.
point, because we're not doing any, I think we can let it go, that we're gonna some schedule things, but we're gonna put together that committee, and we're gonna get moving on this pretty quickly, because I am concerned about the cost of what it's going to cost. And again, I'd like to just point out to any youth group that feels that they wanna make a sponsorship donation, the Board of Ed will not refuse it.
So Anita, let me just for clarification, so any outside group jamborees, anything that we classify as something that basically we could charge for, is that portion on hold until November?
It's on hold until there is a schedule.
We're gonna try to move that.
We're going to try to move that along. I think that if we set, the board meeting is April 12th, the next board meeting. If we set April 12th to have the committee in order, so that we have it
That's like 2
formed
weeks.
by, that's in 2 weeks.
like
And
yeah,
then,
right.
then we can begin to take off from there.
So the committee is gonna determine what the cost, the rental cost will be for those.
Not
events.
necessarily, they could be, but they're gonna look at other things for it.
Okay, because the reason behind my question is those activities that were discussed as to potential activities that you could charge for, are those, so if someone approaches the town or whoever, or the DOE and say, okay, I want to host something, and, what is our response in that situation? Is it to wait until November?
No.
Or, okay, so it can be scheduled.
Mhm.
So what about determination as to what the cost is going to be?
Then that would be, where we'd have to have a decision on what that cost would be. We'd have to have a
Okay.
meeting and say, we'd have to say, okay, the ABC soccer team from Canada wants to use our field, and they're gonna use it for, wishful thinking. They're gonna be using it for 3 days. What is our plan? What do we have to have? How much do we need to charge them? Do we need to charge them $2,000 a day? Do we need to charge them $3,000 a day? And what is our cost? What is it gonna cost us for maintenance crew? What is it gonna cost us for lighting? What is it gonna cost us for police, if we need to have a police there or something
But
like that?
that would be a one-off, it wouldn't be indicative of future
No,
policy.
it
I would
wouldn't be,
imagine.
yeah.
Okay, all right, well, if there's turnaround time to figure out all that, once that approaches me, that's fine. But my thought is that discussion or that decision needs to be made now.
Mhm.
Not at this meeting, but probably Bob and Tina, consult and figure out what the potential
For
cost.
the outside group.
Exactly, so that if that proposal comes before you, you're not going to do any background research, you already have it all set. And then if the board needs to approve anything,
Mhm.
that thing is already approved. So you want to just be ready, just in case an offer
Sure.
like that comes to the table.
So maybe what we can do is to look at, we have a lot of comparative data.
Exactly, if you want to pull
Plus
that.
ours, maybe we look at all of that, and maybe we can bring you a draft of something in April.
Yeah, April or May.
April or May, yeah. So we would work on that.
Okay, thank you. And anyone is welcome to stay for the meeting.
We still have to have our whole meeting?
I think we're good to go. I mean, we had discussion.
Steve, will you reach out to Victor?
Sure.
And just let him know that the conversation that we had in my office, that meeting we had in my office, is how things will proceed. Okay? Thank you.
Next is a report of standing committee. Dot ACES.
Yes, ACES. ACES did have their meeting on, well, the day our meeting was canceled.
Good night.
All right, I'll call you.
Which, by the way,
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. We did have our meeting on our regular schedule, second Thursday. Just like every other school district or anybody involved with schools, the biggest part of our meeting was talking about the budget. We did have, and we do this annually, we have the person who comes down from Hartford to talks about freedom of information.
Oh, sure.
And and he goes over through the new members, what FOI is and what it isn't. It's very helpful, and he said that they are available to school districts and towns for joint meetings if anybody was interested in really learning.
Is that Mr. Hennick?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then CABE was there. And they, again, talked a lot about legislation that's currently in Hartford. And they're doing workshops on civility. And they're open to working with boards of ed and town anybody, any board or commission that runs meetings that has public comments. So I thought that was very interesting. And then the final thing was the discussion of student walkouts and walk-ins and what their position was. And I respectfully disagreed with them.
Dot, was there any conversation at the ACES meeting about the collaborative of towns in terms of transportation for next year?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's still.
Yeah, we signed the contract.
Yes, it's ongoing.
Yeah.
And I know with the collaborative for the health, we have another derby signed on.
Oh.
So that's good.
I know they were in discussion with us on Thursday.
Yeah.
I didn't know that they had officially signed on because of that.
Well, I was just at their gala, and that was brand new as of the other night, so.
Thank you, Dot. Curriculum, instruction, and planning?
Yeah, we have a short report tonight. We met on March 5. Carol Ardito joined us to discuss essentially two courses. We talked about two programs. Carol Ardito joined us to discuss an advanced computer concepts and skills proposal. The class would facilitate instruction for students transitioning to high school. These are students who no longer need keyboarding. However, for those students that may still need it, it will be offered for an additional year if it's necessary. And this new course would explore more advanced functions of various computer applications.
I was just going to say, our students
I
are
heard
coming
you-
up.
I heard you about to say.
Our students are coming up more prepared now that we have
Right.
programs at the elementary and stronger programs at the middle school. So it's a good reason for shifting.
That's great.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And pretty much along the same lines, Patty White joined us to discuss a middle school science program, which is based on current shift in high school curriculum. And again, the purpose is to create more active learners and to bridge the transition between 8th grade and 9th grade.
You have anything else on your list?
I was waiting for you to add something.
No, the only other thing.
And that's about it,
The
yeah.
only other thing that I want to add that's kind of in my report, but we talked about it, CNI. One of the field trips that was previously approved by the board, which is the Ellis Island trip for juniors, they just need to make some date changes due to SATs changing and such. So you approved the field trip in essence, but the date will shift a little bit, and I'm not sure exactly what date they're going to go with because now we've been snowed out of our SAT.
But we did suggest
So,
not Friday.
But not a Friday. We
Yeah.
had that conversation, exactly. That's it.
Okay. That was it?
That's it?
Oh, did you? Oh, you.
Can I ask a quick question? Curriculum, did the college fair take place, did the course night take place? Wasn't that scheduled in February?
Yes.
Yes,
And that
a
did go
while back.
through?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, Tina, finance and operations?
Oh, could I just say something else? I'm sorry, because I didn't know it was my report time too. It's very quick. I just want to let the board know that Carol Ardito, our K-12 career and tech ed coordinator, has applied for a supplemental part of the Perkins grant, so it's an additional one that we can try for to see if we get. And that is for $31,782. And so, we're still waiting to hear whether we will get any funds for that, but it would be to improve our career and tech ed programs. So part of it is just, I know you had granted me permission to be able to write grants on behalf of the district, so we just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. And the last thing I have is that if there's anybody in the community who needs to register a child for kindergarten for next year, everything is online. You can call your home school and just go online. Everything is there.
You're good.
Have people,
Yes.
Linda, and how are the numbers looking?
About 120-something students registered across the district. So Clintonville is like bursting. I think Green Acres is pretty high. Montouison Ridge not as high. Is that accurate, Patrick?
That's accurate.
It's off the top of my head. That's it.
Now finance and operations.
We met tonight for the committee. Financials we received are some of our excess cost money, and so I've allocated those costs that we had negative in the past, the last couple of budget meetings, over to the excess cost, so that we can, our general fund budget is now showing that we're okay in those particular line items. We are still tracking a small loss with, or a loss with the benefits, and balancing where the claims are gonna be, and we're, right now, we're gonna be okay within our budget, we just have to figure out where we're pulling it from. Other than that, I think we're gonna be okay with everything. The transfers we have are small, for, individuals who are trying to stay within their program budget, just moving money, within it. But other than that, I think we're gonna be okay.
So Tina, we're trending.
We're trending about where we should be at this point.
Thank you, Tina. North Haven Education Foundation, Joe's not here tonight, but again, I just want to reiterate about the spelling bee. I know we have a team put together. And that is coming up, I forgot, middle school building committee, thank you, Bob. And that is coming up in April 26th.
April 26th.
26th,
Thursday.
that's all. Goldie, I'm sorry,
Finally.
I passed you. Middle school building committee, anything?
I didn't attend the last meeting, but reading off the minutes, it was just minor cleanup construction issues that were being addressed with a cabinet in one of the classrooms and also the egress light in the auditorium, and then just approval of invoices for contractors.
What do you mean by egress?
There's an egress light in the auditorium
Mhm.
that has problems that they need to address regarding fire marshal.
Okay, oh,
fire
he
code.
mentioned that to me.
Fire
Okay.
code, yeah, exactly. So that, and then there was a shelf, approval to install a shelf in one of the classrooms or the labs, if I recall
Eighth grade.
correctly. Yeah, so just minor cleanup construction stuff, and then approval of invoices. Next meeting is April 2nd at 8:15 in this room.
So, just my quick question, you can answer me that. When we talk about that secondary list, when do the items for that secondary list become something that could be possible for the middle school? And I'm not talking about bleachers, I just wanted to know, I'm just
Yeah.
talking about that secondary list that we have. And that once we find out how much money is available, left over?
So there's, as things are being tidied up, you know, that kind of shows up. There's always an update financially as to what's left.
Mhm.
You know, that list, we haven't got to that list yet. My guess is at the end of the day, when we get there, it will be sort of like priority as to, okay, what comes first, based on what's available, how much is available. But right now, we get updates. you
Do we have
know.
a list of what that is? I just would like to see it
Yeah,
myself.
yeah,
Can
there's,
you get
yeah.
that for me?
Yeah, I'll talk to Gary
Yeah.
to see if I can
I'd like
email
to see
you,
what's on that
send you
list
an email with the list.
And maybe look at some of those priorities, and, you know, our priority as an education might be different than somebody else's priority.
Yeah, but if I recall correctly, a lot of the things there are construction related. You know,
Okay.
so you have your bleachers, you have things like scoreboards and track, you know, replacing of the surface of the track or refurbishing the surface of the track.
Mhm.
You know, but I'll have Gary.
That track
email.
needs to be done, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, have Gary send that to me, just so I
Yeah.
have an idea of
Yeah,
what other
yeah.
things are on there. Thank you. Okay, item number 6 is policy. We need a policy committee, and that committee was going to work to look at the policies we already have in place, look at the policies that it's time to be renewed, make the policies along with this group for field charges, ensure that our policies are being enforced. I'm thinking that we would start in June, July timeframe. We usually don't have a Board of Ed meeting in July, but maybe we're gonna have a meeting on there. So I need 3 volunteers for policy.
I volunteer.
You'll do it? Okay. I'll do it also. I don't mind doing it, so we need 1 more person. And Wes. Wes did it before, so this is good. Okay, so what I'm thinking is we'll do it, we'll start doing it after July, after June, and start getting some things so that we can have them in place for, if they need to be voted on, in our September meeting.
Anita, can we send you suggestions?
Of course.
Okay.
It would be very good with that committee if we could take a set of policies a month
Mm-hmm.
instead of what we did the last time.
I want to do them all at once.
Yeah, I know. So, we can talk about that now that we've got the
Okay, and
group together.
then what we can do, Bob, is you can take a look at those stats and figure out which ones are priority to be changed.
Sure.
So our goal was, we really did get them updated in the last 3 to
That's
4
right.
years.
Mhm.
I
Jenny
appreciate
Caldwell,
Jenny
yeah.
Caldwell did a phenomenal
Yes.
job, but if we don't continue, we're gonna end up in the back way that we
That's right.
are going to be. PTA Council?
So the PTA Council met, and the next meeting is tomorrow night. There was a lot of discussion around the budget. A lot of folks agreed with the budget exactly as it was presented by Dr. Cronin at the March 3rd presentation to the Board of Finance. So that was discussed at length. There was a discussion of safety measures, and parents will be attending the April 3rd budget hearing to speak in support of both safety measures and the budget. There's a color run scheduled for April 8th.
What is that? I'm seeing it all over my Facebook feed.
So it's, there's a 5K and there's a 1 mile run that are taking place to benefit the local school PTAs. And while you're running, you get sprayed with this fun colored powder, and at the end, there's like, you can release your powder packet. So it's really fun, and everybody gets messy and colorful and wonderful. It's actually, it's sort of in the tradition of Holi, which is an Northern Indian holiday celebrating the arrival of spring. It's not necessarily marketed that way, but it's the same exact practice.
Great, good. I wondered what it all was.
It was really, it was a great event last year. It's a big fundraiser this year. You can still participate if you'd like to, but I do believe you have to get your tickets at the actual run itself, so you're not guaranteed a shirt. But it should be really fun.
Good, thank you.
And aside from that, we have, we're moving forward with a planned screening of the movie Screenagers, which is about screen time, the perils and benefits of screen time with young folks. There's also talk of a program called Sister Soldier, which is a nonprofit organization that brings awareness and healing to girl bullying specifically. It's a day-long workshop, and the middle school is considering it right now. And there is a middle school fundraiser at Chipotle on April 24th from 4 to 8 p.m. And
Which Chipotle, the one in Wallingford?
I'm not sure. I'm
Hamden.
going to
They usually do it in Hamden.
Clintonville had St. Patrick's Day event, as did some of the other schools. I attended Clintonville's. It was a huge success. Super duper fun. My husband.
Did your husband participate?
He did.
He did.
And
I thought so when I saw you.
a really good amount of money was raised. Last I heard, it was over $20,000 for childhood cancer research. So that was phenomenal. And the after-school enrichment activities continue. We've got French, ukulele, STEM stuff going on. The kids are loving it. The parents are loving it. So that's overall a good thing. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay, we're next going to go into Dr. Superintendent's report. Dr. Cronin is going to talk about school safety and a security report. He has an information item, and then I'm going to add something to it, which will end up being an action item.
Do you want to do the
Yes,
approval?
I lost my page. So may I have a motion to approve the standing committee reports?
Motion.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I thought that I would use the opportunity tonight to talk with you a little bit about some of our safety and security procedures. Now, these are not all of them, and and there are some that we deliberately don't talk about.
Yeah, of course.
But there are some things that we've done and are doing that I think you should know about. So the first is, I had invited the police chief and the fire chief to come to the March administrative council meeting, which was, I forget what day in March, the second Tuesday in March, which was a snow day. or some dismissal day. And so they are now going to come back on April 10th. And we'll spend the entire administrative council talking with them about school security. All the administrators will have an opportunity, they've had an opportunity to submit some questions and then bring other questions with them. And so, just so that we can have a dialogue. Each school, as you probably know, has its own school safety plan. And those plans are shared with both the police, given to both the police and the fire departments. They're updated annually or more frequently if necessary. By June, is that what you were going to talk about?
No.
Okay. By June, Mr. Frieda has asked that the school district and then the police department for the town provide a report to him about requested security upgrades. And that he was emphatic that the cost of the upgrades would not be the responsibility of the Board of Education. So what I've asked, to try to do this in a systemic way, all of the principals will work at their buildings with their safety committees. We have a safety committee in each building. I asked them if they could work with their building, develop their needs by May 15th. And then after May 15th, I'm going to bring myself, Phil Diana for facilities, Jen Kosnewski from technology, and a principal and a safety committee member from every building together to sort of compile all of this and to put it together to be sure that we're all clear on what we're requesting and that we're covering the essentials, that people are getting the things that they need. So that will, the principals have begun that work or know to begin that work at this point. The police chief, when we were at the department head meeting in March, earlier in the month, the police chief asked if, at the elementary schools in particular, as they're doing, police officers on duty do drive through and around the school grounds throughout the day. He wondered about their stopping in from time to time and just checking in the building to see how things are, and I thought that was a great idea, and I was very grateful. I think he suggested that this is something they had tried at Ridge Road, Patrick, and he really liked the outcome of that, and so we're going to begin to do that in all of the schools.
I was going to say, Dr. Cronin, when we had a DARE program, the officers were in the building. I mean, they were mostly working with fifth graders, but, you know, they were in the cafeteria, so, you know, the fourth and fifth graders, they became very, very, everybody was very comfortable with them.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that that we will expand that to all of the schools. Each building principal has, I've asked that they walk their building with a member of the town's SWAT team to identify any safety measures that would strengthen our school security. Now, we've done that a few years back, so this is a revisit of that and an update of that. And many of the schools have completed that. Some of them are scheduled. They'll be done, I would say, within the next few weeks. Every school's head custodian is required to check to make certain all doors in the building are locked once the starting bell rings and school starts. And then, so they go to every door with access to the outside to make certain that it is locked. And there is a chart in which they signed off that they've done that. Then we've asked at the elementary school that once everybody is back in from recess after lunch, that they do that again. And the middle and high, we will do it first thing in the morning, and then because there's not a recess, we'll find another time midday in which they'll be doing it. But in both buildings, they will also be checking twice a day to be sure that all of the doors are locked. All employees are required to wear the lanyards, and I put a reminder of that today in my update to the staff, my weekly update to the staff. But people are really very good about that, I have to say, in the district.
Can I ask a question about the lanyards? What are we doing about the student lanyards?
My next thing.
Well, that's because we're just so connected.
Yes, really. We've ordered the lanyards, and we're going to start them at the high school. And the lanyards should be in any day, yeah. And the high school has an advisory meeting coming up for students that they meet in small groups. And our hope is that we will have the lanyards and the photos to have that ready to go at their advisory.
Are we using their class picture?
We're using, actually, they have,
Pictures in Power School.
yeah, pictures in Power School. Yeah. So that will be done. I would like that within the next week if we can do that.
Will we be doing middle school next year?
Well, yeah, I think we will. We ordered them for the middle school. I think that this will give us an opportunity from April to June. The middle school, being the newest building, is extremely secure. Nothing is flawless. But this will give us an opportunity to see how well this works and for us to work out the kinks and then go from there. Okay?
Thank you.
And then Dr. Kerner, with the seniors, when they graduate, there'll be,
They have to return them.
They have to return them whenever they
Yes.
get their diploma.
We can make that
very
part of
important.
graduation. Here's
Right.
your diploma, give me your lanyard.
Somebody could be the lanyard, yeah.
And we've talked about trying to, with Jen through IT, differentiating the look of them annually, so that then there's something visual that tells you that the students who should no longer,
What
you know,
class
those
they're
shouldn't be
in.
hanging around. So
Yeah.
we've had some conversation about that.
We've also talked about, and Jen is working on a visitor's badge system where your license is used, and your picture is on, and then after a certain period of time, it dissolves, or something happens so that the picture isn't visible.
The ink bleeds at some point.
So, I mean, that doesn't happen immediately, but.
Yeah. Now, I was gonna say, because at Gateway, if you forget your lanyard, you have to show your your ID, and they print out, it's just sticky paper, and with your picture.
Like a
and then-
temporary.
And then at the end of the day, when you're walking out, you just tear it off.
Yeah.
It's something that you really couldn't use the second day. You couldn't take it off and put it on another.
Right. And this one, it sounds like as we were talking about it, something happens after so many hours.
Like
and
it disintegrates
yeah.
almost, so you can't use it the next day.
Right. So, in addition to that, administrators review safety protocols with staff prior to the start of each school year. Administrators actually have reviewed the mid-year again this year, and teachers are do the same within their classrooms. We're going to have a member of the SWAT team observe a lockdown also in every building, just for feedback on both the efficiency and effectiveness of what we're doing and are there better ways of doing it. So some of them have been scheduled and will be. There is always some talk, but I don't think enough talk about mental health. And we have hired, in the district, we have a full-time school psychologist and a full-time social worker in every building. At the high school, we have 2 social workers and a psychologist, additional 0.5, who is also the coordinator. In addition to that, we have 3 guidance counselors at the middle school, and we have 6 at the high school. So, over the past few years, the board has made an investment in mental health staff. And let me just see here. We had a safety assessment completed at the high school by an outside person a couple of years ago, and there were recommendations that were made in that which we have implemented already. And As I said to you, there are security measures at the building that we don't share publicly. High school students, actually, Dr. Daly has put together a very nice PowerPoint on school safety that they're going to do at advisory at the high school when we distribute the lanyards. So it's really, I went over it the other day, it's really well done. The middle school administration met with each team in grades 6, 7, and 8, and one of the topics they reviewed with them was school safety. Also at the high school, as I'm sure you know, we have a school resource officer and 2 school security guards. So,
And that's where I'm gonna go. So-
yeah.
That's, go
Can I
ahead.
ask a question, Dr. King?
Yeah.
You mind? The lockdowns, I know that everybody practices them, but do they practice lockdowns with kids in the cafeteria or kids in the gym for an assembly or when they're out at recess? Because God
I know.
forbid something ever
Yeah.
happens, it's never, the best time. So do they know what to do in those alternate settings?
I have asked that happen, and I've not attended any of those, but I believe that they are taking place.
And I have a quick
Yeah.
question on that too, the lockdowns. Are they all supervised by police or do they, I know that in the district where I teach, every time there's a lockdown, it is coordinated with the police ahead of time and they station officers at the end of every hallway. They're able to say which teacher made a mistake. They're able to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so what they actually, our building happens to be shaped well for that, it's like a letter H, but different buildings, there's a vantage point down different hallways, and they're able to say, I noticed that you shut your door and then reopened it. Or I noticed that this teacher came out to do a quick sweep of the hallway. And then after every single drill, there is a debriefing with the principal and the custodian.
Good idea.
Okay.
And the police, they work in tandem with the police department, and they do that. We have 8 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and a high school, and they coordinate that ahead of time.
I'll talk with Chief McLaughlin
Yeah,
about that.
see
I
if
think
just,
that's,
so they can point out different
Yeah.
spots to fix.
Question about the mental health staff.
Mhm.
So we've made an investment in mental health staff. Have we reviewed and/or put into place new mechanisms through which, teachers might be encouraged to to report concerns and/or ways that the staff can, I don't know, somehow monitor what's going on more efficiently or
No, I think
have
that-
eyes in the back of their heads? I mean, it's one thing to hire them, and it's another thing to make sure that there's a specific way that they review things.
I think that there are protocols in place. I think that they can always be improved upon, but I think that my sense is that we do a very good job of working with students and their families who are experiencing mental health problems. We work very closely with the mobile psychiatric unit, the 211, so I think, again, we can always get better, but I do think that people know the avenues.
My concern for lockdowns or just general safety is substitute teachers.
Mhm.
Is there a folder that they come in and this is
Yes.
what the procedure is and?
Yes, in every
Yeah.
classroom.
Good. Okay. I mean, that's the strength of having permanent substitute teachers.
Mhm.
They're assigned to each building
Mhm.
because
They know.
their routine. It's when you have a teacher that, substitute teachers, this coming in for a day, and you don't see them again for 3 months.
Right.
I think there was
That's-
some communication with Kelly Services about some of our safety pieces too, so that they could give some training to the substitutes.
Kelly Services is who we work with to get substitutes.
Okay.
Amanda?
So there are a lot of programs that have gotten a lot of national attention, like the Buddy Bench or, the Sister Soldier program that encourage students to take some ownership and to, approach a classmate who's eating lunch on their own or something like that. Do we have anything in place?
I think we do. Actually, last year, the middle school, there was a few teachers at the middle school and a club that built buddy benches for each elementary school. And they and donated them for the playgrounds. I know that we do, there is a kindness club at the middle school, I believe, that has been pretty active for a few years. I think that it does get a lot of attention. Our PBIS system, you know, our positive behavioral interventions and supports, that really also focuses on friendship, kindness, that sort of thing.
I know that some students are working through the zones of regulation, and that
Right.
there's a lot of information being disseminated to them. I have a second grader who was teaching my 4-year-old son last night about the zones of regulation. So really good, I know that we're doing really good stuff, but I think it's helpful for everybody to hear about it.
Maybe we can, a letter to the parents in the future will be sort of a summary of some of those things that we've been doing, because there are some really good things happening in the building.
So, Dr. Cronin and I met with Mike Frieda, and as with the Board of Ed, safety and security of our students, our personnel, and the occupants of our schools is a town priority too. So Mr. Frieda told us that the town is willing to make an investment in school security as a line item that comes out of the town budget, not the Board of Ed budget, of approximately $280,000 to allow for uniformed SRO officers at each school. So currently, we do not have SRO officers at our elementary schools. So there would be one at each elementary school, and they would be there all day long. They would be in uniform. Most likely, they would be retired police officers, and they would be at the school. We would add one additional SRO officer to the middle school, because currently we have a half-time SRO officer that we are sharing with the high school.
Right, well, he's really on call.
On call,
You know,
okay,
at the
okay.
middle school, so that's why I think that it's good that they have somebody.
And then the high school has an SRO officer and does have security guards on campus. I'm comfortable sharing this because this is public knowledge, but typically I don't share anything when it comes to security. But this is a public knowledge, so I feel comfortable sharing this at this board meeting. So for town planning purposes, I'd like to add to the agenda an action item to approve the SRO officers funded by the town. But first I have to make a motion to add to the agenda, and then we can have further discussion. Are you all okay with that?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so then may I have a motion to add an action item to the agenda? Second, all in favor? Okay. I'd like to add to the agenda an action item to approve the SRO officers funded by the town. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. So now I'd like to just get your opinions on that.
I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it's very important. I mean, it's the school day that this SRO officers are there at the very beginning of the school day, even as the students are arriving, and again, at the end of the day as they're funneling out. So,
They're usually hired through the police department. The hiring
Yes,
process, okay.
I believe so. And again, most of these people will be probably retired North Haven police officers, I'm
Okay.
assuming, on there. Okay. Do you have SRO officers at your school? Do you?
We have people that just come through.
Okay.
They do it at different times, but it's reassuring. You know, at one
Yeah.
point, they came to the computer lab and he said, I looked for you guys in your classroom, you weren't there, I was concerned.
Nice.
So that's kind of nice.
it would be nice for the officers also to do, I don't mean do lunch duty, but to be available.
It'd be nice if anybody
Well,
else
that
did lunch
too.
duty.
I'm sure they might do stuff like
No,
that.
but to be available.
Yeah, that would drive them out of the
Integrate them
career.
into the
No, but I mean, that's when you have the opportunity
Yes,
to talk to
to
kids.
talk to kids informally, you're right.
And the kids eat it up.
Right.
They like sitting at the table with the officer. They, you know, well,
You're
the
right.
little ones anyway. I don't know about middle school.
So again, what I'd like to do is have this, hopefully the money will be found. He committed that money, but of course we're going through other things. But I want to make sure that we've approved it, we're okay with it, and they can go forward with it as they see fit. But I really think it's important that we get at those elementary schools.
So are SROs typically armed? I was just gonna ask that.
Is our security resource? Yeah.
Yes.
The SRO is armed.
Yeah, that's how I always felt too, Amanda. I didn't even want a uniformed police officer in the school several years ago. I believe, when we could talk offline on this, what you see and what you don't see when it comes to a weapon. And I believe that the uniforms would be what our people wear, the yellow shirt. I could be wrong, not as intimidating.
I just think we have additional, it's so hard because
Mhm.
everybody wants our elementary schools to be as secure as they can be. But I worry about the accident factor at elementary schools. Like, I have 2 kids of my own and they're constantly getting into stuff that they're not supposed to. God forbid somebody gets their hands on something that they shouldn't have their hands on.
But it would be on the SRO's officer's body.
Talking about a retired policeman, I'm sure that he knows how to handle
Yeah.
a weapon appropriately.
Would you, you're comfortable?
Yeah, okay. We could talk about it in executive session. I can tell you some other things that may be happening.